Hi, I'm Shulin, and welcome to After the Bar. We often hear about the success of trailblazers in and outside of law. What we don't have access to is their inspiring backstories, their untold sacrifices, and what they did to get them there. This podcast brings you stories from some of the most accomplished lawyers, former lawyers, and other movers and shakers in the legal industry from around the world. As a former lawyer myself, I've spoken with thousands of lawyers over the years as a legal recruiter. After the Bar aims to share some of these conversations with you, giving all of us a glimpse into their world. To receive updates on new episodes, just search Shulin Lee on LinkedIn and follow me. So we have a treat today for everyone. We have a lawyer well known for his sense of humor today, Adrian Tan. He's here to share about his incredible journey. He's the head of IP and tech and a litigation partner with TSMP Law. He's also the award-winning author of the Teenage Textbook, a book which was even made into a movie. And just about a month ago, he's been elected as president of the Law Society of Singapore. Some of us might find Adrian particularly familiar as his social media posts very often go viral. In fact, he's sometimes known as the King of Singapore. Adrian and I have done a number of career seminars for NUS Law and Singapore Academy of Law in the past. He's a very sought-after senior litigator specialising in court disputes, and Adrian's cases span the areas of intellectual property, confidential data misuse, shareholder oppression, contractual interpretation, and class actions, amongst many others. Adrian finds most satisfaction in tackling complex matters, especially when they result in leading decisions in Singapore's highest courts. Notably, Adrian also possesses a rare second degree in computer science and psychology. This background, plus his experience as former general counsel at Crimson Logic, a Singapore tech company, puts him in a unique position to advise on tech and IP disputes. Okay, thanks so much, Adrian, for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time. And congratulations on being elected president of the Law Society.
Well, thanks, Shulin. I mean, we've known each other for so long, and I think it's a bit weird for me to talk to you officially rather than as a friend.
Yes.
But I was Law Society vice president for many years, and before that, I was treasurer. And so I thought I'd take a break and do something else. And I decided that I would be a king. And I decided to go on social media and try and talk about reform, change in the law. After that, I started thinking about what about other forms of change, social change, changes in the way we think about things. And then it sort of snowballed. And after a while, I thought, okay, I think lawyers should be able to relate to this. I think lawyers have a role in raising awareness about law and other social issues. And that's when I thought, probably time to return to the Law Society and volunteer again.
Yeah, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I think this is the best time for you to actually step up as to be the president of Law Society.
Oh, it's very kind of you to say that.
Really?
Law Society is an association of volunteers. It's basically a lot of lawyers volunteering their free time to do good for the profession and also for society, for Singapore. And it's always been helmed by top legal minds in Singapore. So the previous president, Gregory Vijayendran,
yes,
he served for 5 years. He is the record holder, the longest serving president we had. And under his administration, I was going to say under his rule, under his reign, many new policies were implemented. But then we got hit by COVID, and Gregory was there to steady the ship. I'm not sure what I can bring to the table, but I want us now to start thinking about living with COVID, living with the pandemic, or even beyond that. So that's what I hope to do being president.
Yes. Oh, very excited. And we'll talk more about that later.
Yes.
We're very keen to hear more about you, your direction for the Law Society.
Yes.
So, Adrian, so we have known each other for many years now.
Really?
Quite a number of years.
Yes.
And shall we go back to the beginning? Can you take us back to when you were still in law school?
Oh dear. Right. How far back can I remember? Human memory doesn't go back that far. I think I was in law school in the late 80s.
Yes.
So in the late 80s,
Yes.
is before this thing called social media or internet. Mobile phones were being invented, but they were huge. And everyone who wanted to talk or communicate in a mobile way would use something called a pager. I'm not sure if you remember.
I remember the pager days.
Right,
yes.
right. So that was considered quite advanced. And I'm trying to paint a picture of a Singapore that has been consigned to the history books. At that time, everything was much slower. People interacted. They wrote letters to each other. If you liked someone in school, you'd write her a note. That sort of thing. It was all very slow and deliberate. At that time, I needed to put myself through university. So the standard way of making money to support yourself was giving tuition.
Yes, tuition.
Yes, that's right. And I think it's still a big industry today, maybe much bigger. In my time, I was a terrible tuition teacher. I was really... I think I had a very bad record. I taught English.
English.
Yes, but yes, I think my students barely passed, and I couldn't make a good living. At the same time, I was writing for magazines. So I would write under various pseudonyms, pretending that I was much older, sometimes pretending I was female, and writing about topics for working people, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And one day, somebody met me at a party, a publisher, and he was Goh Ek Keng. He was a lawyer as well. And he said, look, I read your articles. You know what you should do? You should write a novel. And I said, no, look, I can write little articles, but there's no way I can write a novel. What do I know? I don't know anything. And he says, well, you must write about your own experience. So I said, my own experience is school, Hwa Chong, junior college, national service, and university. So he says, well, look, why don't you write about school, write about either ACS or Hwa Chong? And I thought, yeah, all right, I'll do that, because the thing about Singapore literature at that time, we're talking about the 80s, is that there wasn't a lot of local Singapore literature in English. The other languages are well served, but English somehow was a problem. So when I wanted to read something about growing up in Singapore, I'd go to the Hwa Chong library or the ACS library, and it would be by Western authors, many, very good authors, but I couldn't relate to them, and I wanted to write about the Singaporean experience.
Yes. This is the sequel, right? The
Yes.
Teenage Workbook.
Yes. So I wrote the teenage textbook and then the teenage workbook.
Teenage Workbook. Yes.
Yes,
It's a
so
sequel. Yes.
It is a sequel. You're right.
And the
Shulin.
teenage textbook was made into a movie.
That's right.
Yes.
It was, and
With
and
Melody Chen, I remember.
That's right.
Yes.
So the book came out in 1988. I'm not sure where you were in 88.
No. I was in school.
Right.
I was reading.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
I was able to read.
I was, and then in 1998, some young Singaporean filmmakers decided to come and ask me, can they make a movie? And the standard things that you should ask if anyone ever wants to make a movie of your book is, who are you? What's your track record? How much will you pay me, etc. And I didn't ask any of these questions. I said, okay. And then they went ahead and made a movie. And I should have done the lawyer stuff, which is do a contract and everything.
Yes.
But I didn't, because I was so keen to support Singapore filmmakers, Singapore artists. And so the Singaporeans who made it, Philip Lim and Jonathan Poo, they cast a new cast of Singaporeans. Melody Chen was one of them.
I remember.
Yes, she became a big star.
A big star. So that
Yes.
was the launch pad, actually, was it? For her career, maybe?
I guess so.
Yes.
I guess that's a good way of looking at it.
So you were very early on. So when you were already in law school, you were
Yes.
already a published author.
Yes. So yeah, I wrote my first book, the teenage textbook, in my first year.
First year
Yeah,
in
first
uni.
year of university.
Okay.
Actually, so your next question should be, so weren't you attending lectures and tutorials and studying?
I was gonna get to that, but I was
Yes.
thinking that is quite an accomplishment.
Well, if I had to juggle schoolwork and writing, but I didn't have to, or I didn't, because I just focused on writing and not so much on schoolwork. So that's not a bad, that's not a good thing, kids. Always focus on schoolwork first. So, but I was not I had a lot of interests in school, and I made a lot of friends. I did stuff, and so writing a book seemed okay. And my lecturers, they're very kind, and they still managed to teach me a little bit of law along the way. So first year was the teenage textbook, second year was teenage workbook, and my aim was to write Singapore literature, but also to support myself through university. I didn't want my mum to have the burden of putting me through university. She had a lot on her mind, and it worked out okay. The books did quite well. So for every book, so just some business.
Sure.
So when you write a book in Singapore, you get 10% of the cover price. So the author gets a royalty. This is intellectual property, listen, free, and you get usually 10%. So for every book that I wrote, it was $7.50 for the book, and I got 75 cents. And so I had to put myself through university 75 cents at a time. So every time someone bought a book, I thought, oh, okay, so I can just about make it through the next day.
Yeah, inch you closer to that.
But things were much cheaper than Shulin.
Yes, things were much cheaper. And so when you were in law school, you were busy writing your books. Did you have an idea of the kind of lawyer you'd be? Like, did you set out to be a litigator? I know you started your career in conveyancing.
Yes.
Right? I remember you saying that.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more?
I didn't think I was going to be a lawyer. I thought I might be a terrible lawyer. I wanted to be a litigator, or a courtroom lawyer like Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, and to defend injustice and then lose like Atticus Finch. Okay, that's not a good role model. I think he is a good role model. So I wanted to be something like that.
Yes.
But I was trying to be realistic. I thought, do you really have romantic dreams about succeeding in the courtroom? Get real. You just need to find a job and get married, get a flat, pay for the mortgage, and that's a good life. You don't have that now. So if you get to that point, you're quite good. So I decided that I'd probably just do pupillage, and then I would end up working in something like journalism or advertising, something to do with writing rather than law, because I was comfortable writing.
Yes.
And so I went for my pupillage interview, and I went to this huge law firm, my first law firm. And when I stepped into their office, I got off at the wrong floor, and I was surrounded by these stacks and stacks of paper files. It was the most depressing thing ever. I saw these dark wood, lots of paper files, people peering over documents, and a little bit of typing. So kids in the old days, we didn't type on computers. We typed on things called typewriters. Yes, and there were some were very high end. They had electricity. Normal typewriters. That's right. Normal typewriters are just mechanical.
Yes.
Bam, 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 bam.
Yes.
So imagine a scene where you just have a lot of paper files, people who are reading but not talking to each other, and occasionally typing. And I thought, oh, this is so not me.
No.
I'm never. And I decided I'll just go for my interview and do my pupillage, and then I'll see what happens. And the department I stepped into was conveyancing, which was basically buying and selling real estate, tenancy issues, commercial property, stuff like that.
And this was in the 90s, right?
This was in the 90s, correct?
Early 90s.
Correct. This 1990. And so my interview would have been in 89, something like that. So when I got a place in pupillage, I was very happy. And then I spent a few months being a pupil, and then the partner in charge said, well, look, conveyancing department desperately needs people. So would you consider being a conveyancing lawyer when you're called to the bar?
Yes.
And I said, oh, this is absolutely not the thing I want. If you had to make a list of things I wanted, being a courtroom lawyer would be up there, being a writer, and right at the bottom, a conveyancing lawyer. So I thought the universe was just, this is the sort of thing the universe does to you to tell you that you shouldn't make plans and have prejudices or assumptions about your career. You can have a rough idea of what you want to do, but you mustn't be so rigid about it. Anyway, the universe said, this is the job we're offering you, and spoke through the voice of this partner. And the partner said, conveyancing, they need legal assistance. That's what associates were called in those days. And you'll be working under this very nice partner, and he'll teach you everything about conveyancing. And I thought, okay, that means I get a job. And that means I have a salary and I can think about buying a home and stuff like that. I can plan for my future.
Yes.
So it's a small price to pay being a conveyancing lawyer. And but I found out I had a lot of fun. So conveyancing is about real estate. And if there's one thing that unites Singaporeans, it's real estate. If you go to any party or any social gathering and you start talking, people will invariably talk about where they live, where they want to live, what they think about property prices. And as a lawyer, you have something to contribute if you know something about real estate. So I ended up spending about a year there and learning everything there is to know about acting for a developer, selling real estate, doing title searches. In the old days, these things were not computerized, so we had to look at physical titles, which are big hardcover books, and you can see writing from 100 years ago saying, oh, this piece of land was owned by this Englishman, blah, 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 or this Chinese tycoon, and then he passed it to his son, or he sold it to this wealthy woman. And a whole story of a nation was written in a book. And you could touch and feel the ink that was written 100 years ago and think, well, this was a major event in someone's life 100 years ago. And now I'm adding to that story. I'm going to write, somebody will write after that. And now this property is purchased by so-and-so. So I felt connected to Singapore. So after about a year though, I told my very nice partner, I said, I really would like to try going to court and doing disputes. And that's because I was handling conveyancing stuff. But whenever there was a dispute, a disagreement, I got very excited. I thought, oh, okay, great, let's smash the other side. And then my conveyancing colleagues would say, no, that's not what we do in conveyancing. You just try and be nice and work something out. There's a disagreement.
Oh, I love it. Let's smash the other side.
Yeah. So I'm like, there's some unresolved aggression going on. And either I stay and become an angry conveyancer, which is not a good thing. No. Or I become an angry litigator, which kind of works slightly better.
It does.
More on brand.
Yes. So when you were a conveyancing lawyer,
yes,
you actually made a move to go in-house to Crimson Logic, right?
I made a move to go in-house when I was a litigator.
Oh, when you were a litigator first. Okay.
So I was a conveyancing lawyer for a year. I became a litigator and an intellectual property lawyer. That means a lawyer in our IP department in my first law firm. Yes. And then from there, one of our clients said, oh, we have an IT company and we need someone to take over to be the general counsel because our general counsel is leaving. And I said, okay, it's worth a try. So my law firm, Drew & Napier, they were very, very nice to me. I said, look, I've been working for you for about 10 years. And our major client says, can I go and work in-house with them? So can you second me and give me a chance to work in-house? And then all the partners got together and said, oh, finally a chance to get rid of Adrian.
I'm sure they didn't say that.
Yeah, and
I'm
they were
sure
like,
they didn't say
just
that.
go and, you can stay if you like, we won't miss you.
I'm sure
No.
they didn't say that. So you were in Crimson Logic, and then
Yes.
you moved back into practice, but it
Yes.
was just as a common. It wasn't like a permanent.
It was a couple of years.
It's a couple of years. So it wasn't as a common.
It was a very long secondment.
Oh, very long secondment.
Yes, it's like having a very long engagement.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wonder, is there a point to this? But I was in Crimson Logic for 2 years.
Yes.
And during that time, I also decided I'll do a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science.
Oh, that's when you did your Bachelor of. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And I think it's important that you keep learning.
Yes.
So when you finish law school, sometimes people think, I've done the difficult bit. Now it's all just cruising. And that's not true, because when you finish law school, you're in your mid-20s.
Yes.
And it can't be that for the next 40, 50 years, you don't have any formal training in anything. You still need to go, for example, to learn about business, to learn some new skill, to do a master's. And that's because the world is changing, and you can't just hope to catch on by reading a couple of magazine articles or a book.
And how old were you, Adrian, when you did your Bachelor in computer science? Is it?
Right. That would be, I think, and I'm doing maths here, and you can actually see a person who's struggling with maths. I was in my late 30s.
Late 30s. Okay. Because
Yes.
never too old to do an additional degree, I suppose.
I think not,
Yes.
but it's really tough.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
To work and do a degree.
Yeah.
So what I was doing, and I do recommend this for people who have to work but who still want to study. What I was doing was that in the day, I'd be doing my work in the office, and then at night I would go for classes, because in those days there was no virtual learning. I'd have to go to some out of the way classroom where somebody would lecture me about something, and then I would read books, and then I would have to do homework, and then end of the year there would be exams. So I did that for 4 years, and so my weekends were all consumed with assignments, homework, and preparing for exams, and my weekdays were just lawyer work.
Yes. And do you find the benefit? Because I get this question a lot from lawyers.
Right.
What's the benefit in me doing an MBA or another degree? And you did a completely different thing in the sense that, it's not really related per se. It can be related for sure, but it's a completely different field. And that must have been very challenging, because I know some friends who went to do an MBA, lawyers who do an MBA, and they're like, it's so difficult to wrap your heads around, like, financial formulas. So for you to do Bachelor in Computer Science, that must have been...
It was awful.
Yes.
It's awful. I can say in retrospect, this is like national service. So national service, the further you are from the past of national service, the more you'll say, oh, it's wonderful, there's camaraderie, I was really fit and had a great time. And then while you're doing national service, you're like, oh, this is the most awful thing. Why did I ever agree to this? And the same with doing a course. It's really awful. I don't think you'll have fun. You'll be learning stuff that you're completely unfamiliar with, and your brain will hurt because it's being asked to pull in different directions. But that's really the point. If it's fun and easy, I don't think you're being tested.
Oh, that's true. Yes, that's very true. I didn't think of it that way.
Yes. You have to hurt your brain every now and then.
Let's go back to your career.
Yes.
So you spent 22 plus years with Drew and Napier.
That's right.
I did my homework.
Very good.
And then 4 years ago, you joined TSMP, where you are now, heading
Yes.
up the IP and tech team.
Yes.
Can you talk us through your private practice journey? Because, a lot of people see that, wow, Adrian is like president of Law Society, is a very accomplished lawyer. But, during this period, were there periods of self-doubt? Did you ever think like, maybe I should go back to in-house?
Oh, I hated in-house. But if you're asking whether lawyers have self-doubt, I think all lawyers have self-doubt, and it's healthy. It's a sign that you know that there's stuff that you don't know, and you know that there's stuff you need to improve. I spent 20 over years in Drew and Napier. The people there were my very good friends. I grew up with them. It's a wonderful law firm. It's very successful. And it was a certain kind of big Singapore firm, which is the sort that you'll see operating at a certain level for a certain market segment. It's a very important part of our industry. And then I thought, okay, I have an opportunity now to move to another law firm called Stanford. And that
Stanford.
Yes.
Right.
So I spent some time in Stanford, and I always tell people that all lawyers are like eggs. We can get poached. And I was like an egg in the sense that somebody made an offer and I felt, oh, this is so attractive and fun. And maybe I should move to another firm just to try it out. I can't say that I've lived an entire life in the law without trying different things. So I moved to Stanford, and it's a firm that was at that time doing a lot of corporate work. It's very good corporate work, and had a growing disputes practice. They're very good in arbitration, insurance, shipping, construction. And I thought, okay, there's some opportunity for me to grow. The Stanford then made a joint venture with
Morgan Lewis.
That's right, with Morgan Lewis, which is the biggest law firm in the United States. And then I had a chance to see what a huge US law firm is like. So when you read about Big Law, for example,
yes,
and you watch US TV shows, you think, is this like Hollywood stuff, or is it real? And when I went to Morgan Lewis, I found out that it was mostly real. So, for example, the head of technology in Morgan Lewis was someone who used to work in Google, and he had great ideas about how technology would transform the way lawyers practice. So when you have a Singapore firm, sometimes we think we're big because we have 300, 400 people. And this 300, 400 lawyers are considered a huge size, a giant in Singapore. But Morgan Lewis had 700 partners and lots more associates. So when they're that size, I think they have a lot more scope to invest in technology. And it made me think, okay, these giant international firms, they have a lot more money than Singapore firms, which means they can invest more in technology and other stuff, maybe branding and marketing, and they'll eat up Singapore. They'll eat up Singapore firms. So how do we compete against these giants? We thought we were giants in Singapore, but these people are giants around the world. And the answer is we can compete if we unite and we leverage on the Singapore way of doing things. And in Singapore, unlike in the US, the government leads a lot of initiatives. So the Singapore government has a lot more resources than any US firm, than any international firm. So when we talk about giants, there are big Singapore firms, there are giants in Singapore. Then there are US firms and European firms that are giants in US and Europe. And then there are governments. And our government, I think, is a giant.
Giant.
Yes.
Sure.
And they have they can move quite fast. And I thought, okay, the way for Singapore firms to operate is that at least in the field of technology,
yes,
we can unite and we can have a Singaporean way of being a law firm where we use technology, we're more coordinated, and we can compete at that level. So I began thinking, okay, that must be how we will compete. Otherwise, we'll get eaten up. If you look at the accounting industry in Singapore, the largest firms are sort of the international accounting firms. And they are so far ahead, I think it will not be possible for a Singaporean accounting firm, no matter how good, to catch up in the near future. Maybe one day, but in the near future, there's still a bit of a gap. I don't want that to happen to Singapore. I want us, Singapore law firms, to already establish new ideas and new ways of doing things up front. So I decided that would be the way forward. And being in a US law firm had many advantages, but I also felt a little bit far away from where all the action was. So in any international firm, the headquarters will not be in Singapore. It'll be in London, it'll be in New York, somewhere. In Morgan Lewis, it was in Philadelphia. Very, very nice place. So all the major decisions would happen there. And I felt, okay, that's there's a lot to learn in this. And I would like to see what it's like to work in a different sort of setup, maybe not an international firm. So I thought, what's a good alternative? So my friends from university days and from Hwa Chong days and even before that, started a law firm called TSMP. So that's Teo Shen Yi and Stephanie Yuan Teo. And I'm not supposed to say that I know them from so far back because they actually look much younger than I do. Okay, so...
No, you guys all look very good. Very good looking bunch.
Right, I noticed you didn't say young, but never mind.
Good and youthful looking still.
All right.
So you joined forces with them. These are your friends from way back.
Yes, because I always admired how they were a Singaporean firm. And one of the things I needed to understand is, what is a Singaporean law firm? There's one type. There are the Drew and Napier,
Big
Allen
Four.
and Gledhill,
Yes.
and they have very strong branding, and they're sort of expanding regionally, which is good. I think that's the way forward. But there are also these bespoke. Actually, there's only TSMP. It's sort of like a bespoke, client-focused, premium high-end law firm, which still has a very Singaporean character. By that, I mean they're very connected to Singaporean issues, Singaporean values. And I thought, okay, this is it, basically. So that's how I ended.
In fact, I saw your video of you and the other TSMP partners doing that for migrants on the MRT train. It had a good laugh. It was. I will put that link to the video.
Right.
In the notes. It's hilarious.
That's an
fantastic
example,
initiative.
Shulin. Thank you. So that's an example because I think as a Singaporean firm, lawyers must show that they understand issues beyond just technical or academic legal problems. Lawyers have to show that they are involved in the wider society and they have concerns and they want to improve Singapore.
Yes.
That video was made with the help of ItsRainingRaincoats and MM2. And what they wanted, for some reason, is they wanted free actors. And they thought lawyers would be good as free actors. So
you guys did a really good job. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. The idea then was to communicate without using language, because we wanted to show migrant workers how to adapt to Singapore. And it was very difficult not to use language because that's what a lawyer's default is. So we had to use expressions and gestures.
Like how Mr. Bean does.
Yes.
Rowan Atkinson.
Yes. I'm not sure if I want to be compared to Mr.
I'm just joking.
It's okay.
No, okay. So let's share a little bit more about your recent interview with the Business Times.
Right.
Because I share the same views as you. Because you know what I do for a living. I'm a legal recruiter.
Yes.
And I do see it through the lens of someone who was a former lawyer, because I left the legal profession at a very young PQE at 4 years. And I sometimes wish I didn't. I wish I had maybe tried another law firm, but I mean, that's done and dusted.
No, it's worth talking about.
Yes.
Why do you feel, maybe I should have tried another law firm? What was that?
Why? It's now with the perspective that I now have, because I've been doing legal recruitment for 11 years.
All right.
So I've seen and I see now a lot of young mid-level lawyers leaving private practice almost as a knee-jerk reaction. You know, it's not because they truly want to be let's say an in-house lawyer or leave the legal profession, but more maybe because of burnout, maybe because they're unhappy with their boss, maybe they picked the wrong practice area. So all these are not actually a proper reason to leave private practice in my view.
Yes.
It's more like maybe explore another avenue of private practice. So it's like if I'm a doctor and maybe I don't like to, be a hand surgeon, maybe I do something else.
You're right, Shulin. In a sense, sometimes when we are unhappy with a situation, maybe we're unhappy with a couple of things, we think the entire profession is not for me. But you can do it a different way. You can say, well, I'm not happy with this situation, so let's make a micro change first. Let's change, for example, my area of practice. So I changed from conveyancing to disputes and IP.
Yes.
And that was a micro change for me rather than leaving the profession. So I encourage micro changes because you can always leave the profession later.
Yes, I completely agree with you. So I didn't do a micro change. And I wish I had that insight.
Do you?
Hopefully, yeah, I do wish sometimes it's probably a regret. Although I would say, whatever the decisions I made led me to today, I wouldn't
Yes.
be seated here with you otherwise.
Yes.
But that's why I feel very strongly that lawyers need to think a lot more deeply before they make a career decision. Because going in-house might not be the answer. Maybe, I'm meant to be an in-house lawyer. Sure, go on secondment, do something,
Yes.
try it out. But it might not mean that your career might not be in practice.
Yes.
You might have had a bad day, bad month, bad year.
Yes.
But making that micro change, I think that's a great, very, very good piece of advice because you did that yourself.
And I think that if you worry that this profession will harm you, then you should definitely start talking to people. I guess I put it another way. If you wonder about whether your job is what a lawyer's job ought to be, you can explore within your circle, but you can also ask other people.
Yes.
And I would like young lawyers to talk to other lawyers, young lawyers or old lawyers. And one way to do that is join the law society's various committees. So in the law society, we like to mix things up. If you volunteer for a committee, let's say the Young Lawyers Committee, you get to meet other young lawyers and you have a chance to talk to them in a non-adversarial, non-competitive, collaborative mode, where you can meet someone from another firm and say, hey, I've been wondering, why is it like this? Or do you feel the same way? And you get a forum where you can talk as equals.
Okay. That's great because I never knew, to be honest, until today that it was more on a volunteer basis. I thought people had to nominate you in order to get into law society, to do work for the law society. So now I know. And now many more people will know. So Adrian, can you share what's your philosophy in being a litigation lawyer? Because, you're a really nice guy, very approachable and you write books. But then early on, you said also you want to squash the other side. So what's your philosophy? What contributes to your success as a lawyer?
When I started, I had a very naive view of what litigators were. And I thought that they were warriors. So I thought that they would bash the other side on behalf of their client and that they would be evaluated on the basis of how well they bashed the other side. And that's not what a litigator should be. A litigator is a person who resolves disputes. And sometimes you need to bash the other side, but sometimes you just need to bring the other side nearer to you and you need to move. And then you can find a common solution. And that requires a good relationship with other litigators. And that requires a good understanding of human nature. So I'm beginning to think that litigators are peacemakers. When you have a dispute and you have a war and you want to end it and you want harmony and peace, you bring in a litigator because one way or the other, there will be peace after that. The litigator has tools to say, okay, we'll fight you, but we could mediate. We could go for an alternate dispute resolution process. We could talk and we could use our experience to find a way forward. And how can you do that if the other side's lawyer doesn't trust you?
Exactly, that was what I was thinking.
Yes.
Because the other side might be a basher, warrior.
That's right. So litigators have to show good faith. So the starting point as a litigator is you have to be confident and you have to talk to the other side, open arms and say, look, I'm not going to bash you yet. Let's talk. I'm not carrying my weapons. And you have to show good faith by being courteous and polite, respectful, and open-minded I should say, peace-minded.
Peace-minded, weapons down,
Weapons down.
and then conflict resolution. Right at the end of the day, it's
That's right.
peacemaking. I like that, peacemaker. First time I'm hearing that.
I think the lawyer's first reaction is always give peace a chance. So whenever a client comes, and that's most clients want peace as well. Some clients come to see a litigator and say, "Oh, I'm so angry. I'm so hurt by what the other side has done. I would like you to be as mean as possible to the other side. I'd like you to be so unpleasant, make them feel bad, embarrass them, and crush them." And that is an initial human feeling that many clients have when they're upset. But the litigator's role is to say, I hear you. I can understand why you feel that way. It's a valid feeling. But in the long term, can you think about what would be a good outcome for you? In the long term, do you want to feel like someone who has crushed another person? Or do you want to feel like someone who has resolved the problem and is now moving ahead with your life? And that, I think the litigator's job is to show the long term.
Oh, very well said. Because I was a litigator for a short while. I never had that perspective. So that's very helpful. So, Adrian, if you could have a chance to do a do-over, is there anything at all you might do differently in your career?
Yes. I think if I had to advise someone who wanted to do litigation and someone who wanted to do corporate work, I would say, okay, if you're very sure that you want to do litigation in future, then you got to get a lot of courtroom experience. And that person might say, but if I'm a junior, there's no way I'm going to argue applications. There's no way I'm going to go for hearings as the first chair, let alone do a trial or an appeal as a junior. And I would say there is a way, and that is to join the Attorney General's chambers, be a DPP. You get to do trials very early. So if you're pretty sure that you're a disputes lawyer and you want to get a lot of court time, then that's a good role for you.
Yes, actually, Adrian, that's what I did.
Did you?
Yes, so I was in the AGC for a very brief 3-4 months before I really left the legal profession because I wanted that trial courtroom experience, what I saw on TV.
How'd you find it?
I loved it and also hated it, to be honest. I loved it because within 3 months, I did my own trial from start to end.
Great, right?
Yes, great. I prosecuted this Russian man who molested 2 air stewardesses. I will always remember it. It was in the paper, so it was great. My parents were very happy.
Yes.
It also made me realize that I was not cut out for it. But I did it, and it satisfied that part of me. So I did do that, I guess, box checking exercise.
Very valid.
Yeah. But I think that's great. So you were saying for litigation lawyer, get more courtroom experience. Then if it's a corporate lawyer?
So corporate lawyer, I'm not a corporate lawyer, but I'm told that you would need, for example, very good background in basic corporate work. But at some point, if you go on secondment, you must, you would be able to embellish your CV.
Yes.
So if you spend some time on the client side, that's super important because that's when you start to build your network. There's one more thing for a corporate lawyer, and that is to be nice to your classmates, to be nice to your law school classmates. Why is that? Well, for a corporate lawyer, the thing is, a lot of your clients will end up being people that you went to law school with. Why? Because they might be in-house counsel, working in a bank or in a startup, and they would be people that if you keep in touch with after law school, you have lunch with them, they know what work you're doing and what you're involved in and what your firm has experience in. After a while, they'll ring you up and say, do you know we're looking at this area or we're going into this territory, and do you know anything about it? Because I've been reading your newsletter from your law firm, or I've been reading your social media, and I see that you've got some expertise in this. So since we've been having coffee and lunch for so many years, I feel trust and I feel that I would like to ask you to help me with this. So as a starting newbie corporate lawyer, you're already able to build your client base. If, for example, you're very friendly and you keep in touch with the people you went to school with. It's very easy when you start practice to bury yourself in work and to think, all that matters to me is my partner. As long as my partner is happy with me, I'll have a great career. No, your partner is very important. Learn from your partner, but also remember that you will be a partner one day. But how can you be a partner without clients? That's right. So start getting your clients. They are the people that the people that you played sports with in law school, or the people that you went on trips with, and start keeping in touch with them on social media. That's why social media is so helpful. Even if it's not about law, you still keep in touch with people saying, oh, I just did this, or I just read this, or I just watched this movie, and here's the latest development in the news, and I want to talk about it. Let's meet for coffee. And before long, you have a friend. Of course, a client is good, but a friend is even better. So let's say your friend has a lot of confidence in you as a lawyer. Your friend will start to talk about you to their friends. And they'll say, oh, I know this lawyer. We went to school together. We still have lunch, and has great expertise in this area. So build your client base from day one.
Yeah, very good advice. Adrian, can you share a little bit more about social media? Because many people out there know you now as the self-proclaimed king of Singapore. And, it's fantastic because you comment about so many topics about COVID, about how law, because law basically touches the aspect of everyday life, right?
Yes.
Many aspects.
Yes.
So I see how you interpret the COVID legislation.
Yes.
You talk about, migrant workers. You touch on so many different topics, even about our local sportsmen, right?
Yes,
I think your
that's
recent
right.
article is very illuminating. So when you first started this social media outreach, was it with this intention, or were you slowly you found your voice? Because for me, it was nerve-wracking when I first put myself out there on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So I don't know how it was like for you.
When I was a young lawyer and the internet and social media was just starting, I was warned, lawyers do not blog. And in those days, blogging was viewed as a narcissistic activity where people focused on their own beauty and achievements. Quite obnoxious. But with time, I realized that social media was changing. It was no longer about self, but about society. And I began to read, okay, this is one person's opinion. This is another person's comment. And the value that I found was on the internet rather than in traditional mainstream media. In the past, we used to look at, for mainstream media, look at opinions and be guided by their thoughts. But now, those thoughts are gradually being found on social media. And my firm, TSMP, they are very strong in that area. When I first joined, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to blog. Come on. I'm not going to take pictures of my food or show myself skiing. I find that so shallow. Sorry, guys. Sorry to people who take photographs of their food when they ski. I was not that person. So they said, you don't have to be that person. Just be yourself. And I said, what's the point? They said, write about what you're interested in. So I began writing really safe stuff, like this is the blah, blah, blah. I'm so honored that this thing happened to me. This is a recent survey. It's very balanced, and I'll give you my very balanced view. And they're like, okay, we read it. It's so boring. We could barely keep awake. And I said, well, I'm not sure that I should write what I really think. And they said to me, no, we know you. We know that when we have coffee with you, you can't stop talking and you have ideas. So be that person. And I was like, yeah, if I'm that person, I'll get pelted with rotten eggs in public and people will complain about me. And I'd rather be in my comfort zone. But they said, no, you shall not. You shall not be in your comfort zone. So I said, I have a lot of ideas. I do want things to change. But it's very presumptuous for me to think that I have answers for society. So I thought, how do I suggest things without sounding very presumptuous? So I thought, okay, maybe one way is to say, if I was a different persona, if, for example, I was
the king of Singapore,
everyone would think, okay, he's not serious because we checked and he's not a king. It's easy to prove these things. Apparently, there's a king register. And so they know that I'm not entirely serious. But then I can put forward my ideas about change, about smoking, about migrant workers, about citizenship, about collective sales, about preservation of Singapore and fairness to cats, very important. And people would say, okay, he's not really a king, so we can't really object to it. Let's hear what he has to say. So gradually, Shulin,
Yes.
That's how it came out.
Yes. And it's so well received.
Yes,
So
well,
it's humorous, it is lighthearted, and yet it packs a punch. So that's something, I
Thank you.
really admire you about that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think that's what all lawyers want to do. At heart, we believe that law has great power, and we hate the law. We hate the way law is portrayed in the media. Because if you ask people when they look at mainstream media, movies, and stuff like that, it's mostly about, law means going to court and making someone unhappy. But law is about more than that. It's about society's values. It's about keeping things the way they were or changing things that are not good. And lawyers have a unique perspective. We understand the law and we can say, hey guys, as far as COVID is concerned, a lot of you are saying that compulsory vaccinations and stuff like that, a lot of you are expressing a view and you're wrong because actually the law is like this. And a lot of you are talking about what your employers can do to employees. And actually the position is like this. So we have a unique insight. And I would say it is our duty, if we have this insight, it's our duty to educate the wider public. Someone has to do it. And you can't expect the government to do everything. In modern Singapore, citizens should speak up and point out things.
Oh, very well said. And Adrian, given that the market is constantly rapidly evolving, do you see any opportunities for the lawyers out there who are still building their careers? Is there any advice you give in general, given now that you are the president of Law Society? So just curious, like how do you see the legal market?
I envy the young lawyers of today. They actually have a blank canvas on which to express themselves. Why is that? It's because of COVID. It's because of the pandemic. Law can be viewed as a very conservative, traditional profession where we tend to listen to our seniors and we tend to do what has already been done. That's our doctrine of precedent. We feel that it's safe to go with what's tried and tested. And so the older senior lawyers had developed many skill sets which worked for them. And younger lawyers were put in a position where we had to learn from the older lawyers. But with COVID was a great equalizer. For example, COVID required us to communicate with our clients on Zoom and required us to make submissions to court and have trials virtually. And that was when young lawyers would be able to step into the picture and say, we are familiar with Zoom. We are familiar with webcams. We are familiar with virtual hearings. And so we are actually more experienced than the older lawyers in certain aspects of presenting to court. And I would say now, if we're doing a virtual hearing, the young lawyers may be seen to be as on an equal footing as the older lawyers because they understand how to get their point across virtually. So in that sense, yes, they have an advantage. The other thing about younger lawyers today is that I think they feel that their work must have meaning for them. They also feel that the work is not all-consuming. In my time, I think many lawyers felt that law was a calling that demanded complete commitment. And many lawyers then sacrificed their health and personal relationships so that they could be devoted to the law. And I think the younger generation is saying, no, we think that we can be good lawyers, but we also want to be good spouses, good parents, and good members of the community. So how do we grapple that and make it work?
Yes. Well, that's your job as president of Law Society. So now that we've heard from Adrian the lawyer, thank you so much. Before we wrap up the podcast, let's get personal and ask a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Adrian?
Sure.
So what's your favorite book, given that you're an author?
Oh,
you can't say that it's your own book.
Animal Farm.
Oh,
George
that's one of my
Orwell.
favorite books too.
It's so short.
I saw you credited it in the front.
Yes. It's brilliant. And George Orwell is my favorite writer.
Fantastic. How do you overcome writer's block?
Right. So the way to do it is to start writing about something inconsequential that you've already written out before. For example, John Steinbeck used to just write about his journey from home to office. And he would just take a pencil and write, I took the bus, to write to get warmed up about nothing.
Wow, that's very powerful. In fact, someone taught me to open up a new email, so a blank email, and then just write, because that doesn't feel scary or intimidating.
That's great advice. Don't start with the heavy stuff. Just write about meaningless things.
Okay, great. And if you can sum up in one sentence, what's Adrian's motto in life? What's your motto?
Live long and laugh loudly.
Well said. Thank you so much, Adrian, for your time and being a guest on the show. Really appreciate it.
It's really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. So if you'd like to get in contact with Adrian, then please check out the notes on this episode where his contact details will be found and details of anyone mentioned on the show. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, then be generous and share it with as many people as you can. Rate it and review it and follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for listening. Join us next time to find out what could be in store for us after the bar.